Hello and welcome to the Hobby Breakfast Show. You're joining us again. I'm Mayor and I'm joined today by Chef.
Hello.
And Sebastian.
Hello.
We're going to be going through a tournament report. Over the weekend we were in Worcester at the Battle of Five Shires, which was a GBHL 90. So we'll go through the events, we'll go through a kind of refresher of our lists. We'll go through our games and then recap and see how we did versus our predictions. So the event as an overall, quick recap, it was 34 players, 6 rounds, GBHL 90, and it was run by Leon and Law Smith, and they did an amazing job as always. Worcester's always one of the best events to go to, and everything went extremely well. The prizes were also amazing. And I feel we should give a shout out for the upcoming doubles event, which is also in Worcester. It's a one-day event on the 27th of October. It's just been announced, and it's a 500 points each. There's 3 games, and I think they're 2 hours 20 each. It's also not a GBHL event, so if you fancy just having some fun and not worrying too much about your points, then go on and get some tickets when they come out. So for this, we had 2 700-point armies each, a good and an evil. So it is good versus evil for this tournament. And at the beginning of every game, the youngest player rolls a dice, and on a 4+, they are playing the good force, or on a 1, 2, 3, they are playing the evil force.
The going to jump here and say I didn't get to roll a dice once, which is very depressing.
Really? I think I was about half and half.
No, categorically never rolled a dice. Sad times.
Sad times. No impossible allies for this one, obviously. The scenarios were Divide and Conquer, Clash by Moonlight, Breakthrough, Lords of Battle, Heirlooms, and Retrieval in that order. Rolled in the usual way for the pools, and we obviously all played each scenario each round. So we've got a picture of the prizes here. Pretty nice. I think everyone was happy with their prizes. And Leon did a prize for bang on middle of the table as well, which was nice because no one likes being average. And any overall thoughts on the tournament?
I found it really fun. It was a really good event. I liked that Leon put on some good hobby awards. So he had Best Army, he had Best Single Miniature, and that's any miniature from your collection. So not just your army itself, but any model that you're particularly proud of, you could bring that in. Best display board as well. So you had three pretty good hobby prizes. It's nice to see that at any event. It felt sort of a bit like the hobby prizes you get at Warhammer World, where you get Warband, Single Mini, Best Army, and all that kind of good stuff. And I think the event went really well in terms of running smoothly, and I always enjoy good versus evil. There's one thing about the scenarios that came up actually that I noticed, that there weren't particularly that many objective-based scenarios. As in, there's getting the heirloom and there's retrieval and that kind of stuff, but like those kind of things aren't that objective based. It's not like whole ground or domination. Breakthrough, I think, is probably the closest we had to an objective based scenario. So I thought that was quite an interesting spin on the tournament.
That's true.
More of a mobility based tournament, it seemed, at least to me anyway, for that reason. I agree with what Sebastian said. I really enjoyed it. I thought I don't think any of the games massively overran. I don't think anyone was waiting for anyone. So yeah, run really smoothly. I did really like the fact that it was good versus evil, and the fact that you didn't know which army you were going to be using going into each game. I thought that was quite enjoyable. I think all 3 of us actually had a fairly even spread between using good and evil. I think I went 3 for 3. And I think that was kind of similar for you guys. So kind of balanced out, but I did really enjoy the fact that you didn't know each game what army you was going to be using.
So I think we will then go on to the games. So what we'll do is we'll go in the order that we did last time. So it'll be myself, followed by Chef, followed by Sebastian, and I'll quickly recap my lists, and then we will go into each of the games. We'll just say a little bit about the games and what happens, and you'll be able to kind of follow our journey. So I had Goblin Town and Return of the King. Goblin Town is 86 models. It's all the usual suspects and some Goblin mercenaries. We've got Return of the King, on the other hand, which is slightly more elite, some might say. 27 models, just Aragorn and the King of the Dead. I think there was a fair amount of Return of the King about at the tournament. Most people had just gone with Aragorn and the King. I think one person perhaps had gone for the Three Hunters, which was cool. But ultimately, I felt the extra dudes in Good v Evil would be more useful. So, going on to game one, we've got Divide and Conquer, and I was playing against none other than Chef. So I can't remember who whispered it into my ear, but as we were all talking and Liam was telling us that the round was up, I turned around to see Chef's face as he was just kind of grinning to himself, kind of in disbelief that this had happened. And obviously he was praying game one as well. Yeah,
I went up to Lee, and afterwards I saw Sebastian was stood next to you, and I was like saying to him can you nudge me, because I know I'm playing him. And as soon as you turned around, I was like, I can't believe this has happened. Game one. We literally mentioned it on the last pod that it was going to be inevitable. I didn't expect it to be game one, but I kind of felt that if you had drawn Goblin Town, it was massively in your favour. Splitting my army is really not good in that situation, because it leaves me with one warband with 3 might, and that's not saying it's easy for you to counter, but you can just corner that army corner that warband so that it never actually makes the middle. And there's little I can do to challenge that, because even if I'm, for example, heroic combating with Legolas, okay, I might kill 4 goblins, but you've got 30 surrounding me. I'm not getting anywhere. So yeah. I was praying.
Yeah, and fortunately for you, I did roll for Return of the King. So it was my Return of the King against your Mordor with Gothmog and the Witch King, and a couple of named orc captains. So my strategy for this was generally marching to the middle of the board and trying to cut off one half of your force, and I figured that might as well be the Witch King, because he has the greater range threat over Gothmog in that he can cast spells. So I wanted to try and deal with that. I think I ran kind of past the middle of the board and thought to myself, well, I can fight Chef here for a bit and then pull back to the centre of the board and mop up what's there. I was really hoping to break you a lot quicker than I did. I'm not even sure. Did I even break you in the end? I'm not sure I did.
I don't know. You got 1 VP. I'm assuming that's for breaking, because you didn't wound the Witch King, and you weren't on any objective. So yeah, you must have just broken me.
Then. So yeah, I must have just broken you, but far too late, because you'd swarmed over all the objectives, and my plan to break you and have all your stuff run away did not work. So I charged one side of the line. I couldn't quite get half my force in time. You dwindled a few of them. I think there was a moment in the middle of the game that we both thought that I had it. And then I'm not sure, maybe you can describe the second half of the game. I can't really remember what went wrong for me, but it all just started to go wrong.
I think what... So I'll come back to the first half as well, because there was an interesting tactic that I used at the start to try and counter what I thought you was going to do. But for the second half, once we were kind of all in the middle, I tried to, and people will see this on the photo. I had Zagdush coming around the back with a decent number of orcs, so I just wanted to get in there and trap you. And I think my calling of time, the time of the orc has come, was pretty helpful. I think I called it in a turn where I had the fortune to win quite a lot of combats, and by trapping you and re-rolling all failed wounds, I managed to kill quite a lot of your guys. I think I managed to kill 4 or 5, something like that, in one turn, which for Army of the Dead is quite a big loss. And I don't think I took any casualties that turn, so I was getting to a point where I was nearly outnumbering you 2-1. I think that's what went wrong for you. I had quite a lot of might, and I think I won quite a lot of roll-offs. So Aragorn really didn't do anything. The king got in a bit too late, I think, for you to really have any impact. And having Gothmog in a position where I could master a battle, any heroic moves you called with Aragorn meant that neither of us were spending might, but you couldn't get to Gothmog, which kind of gave me free reign to either put him, just have him on one guy and kind of get a guaranteed kill, or try and charge in and maximize doing a heroic combat.
Yeah, no, I think you did well to limit the abilities of both my heroes, and that Master of Battle is just horrible.
Yeah, it was really nice for me. I really do think it helped me win the game. I think you didn't. I mean, I think you still had one might with Aragorn at the end, and he hadn't taken any wounds or anything, but he just couldn't do anything. No. And I think what really helped me out, going back to the first part of the game, is that I put Guritz and the Witch King next to each other so that I could heroic march and try and start using spells against Aragorn as soon as possible. I can't remember if I did call a Sap Will on Aragorn or not. No, I think I tried to transfix him and you resisted with like one dice and you spelt one might, but that was it really. Like, I think the Witch King just got tied up. You did really well in just throwing one Army of the Dead warrior into him like most turns, so I didn't actually cast that many spells with him, really.
No, but I think he still made his. I mean, you can talk about the Witch King when it's when we're going through your army, but I think it definitely was the right call, wasn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. When we did some practice games and I was using Gothmog's Legion with the Trebuchet, I mean, the Witch King it is so much better. I mean, it's fun using a Trebuchet, but yeah, the Witch King gives you so much utility, and like he's got decent killing power. You know, if he charges in four attacks, and if you win, you got 8 dice to wound on strength 4. Like you should be getting a kill like or two here and there. So, you know, if you're not really having to use much will to cast spells, then you can still throw him into combat. So you can really do a multitude of things.
Yeah, it was really good.
Nothing new there.
No. So I lost that one to Chef 10-1. He had all the objectives and he was broken, and that was it, I think.
Yeah, that was tight though. I think if it went on one more turn, because we rolled, didn't we, and it ended the first turn it could.
Naturally, yeah.
But if it had gone on one more turn, by the time I was broken, if I'd have lost a roll off, I only had one guy on one objective. I had 2 on another, so quite easily could have lost both those. I think I still would have won the game, but by a smaller margin.
Yeah, I think you definitely still would have won. The longer the game went on, I think the better chance I had, but I still think you would have had it.
Yeah.
So that brings me to game 2, which was against Louis, or Lewis, forgive me. He wanted to use Woses because they were fully painted, and the Woses fortunately won't get +1 to wound in this because I have Cave Dweller, or whatever it's called. So I've got Night Vision, and he won't be getting the +1 to wound me, so he'll still be wounding me on 5s instead of 4s, which I guess is quite good. He had a lot of Woses. They've got Woodland Creature, and there are some trees back there. He did some nice little tactics, like leaving some Woses out the front while he slowly backed away, because they weren't in a position that was... Well, essentially I marched right into his face, and then the next turn he just moved back and put a kind of line of dudes in front. He's got spears, same as me. But he's wounding me on 3s, and I'm wounding him on 4s. Except he's also got a banner somewhere, I believe, and I was losing most of the fights. And by the second turn of combat, he had just as many people in combat as I did. So I was just getting ground down. This one, you've got to keep your heroes alive and kill your enemy heroes. And unfortunately for me, the Goblin King rolled a 1 on his courage in the last turn and fled. I was going to lose anyway, but that was just the sort of cherry on top for Louis. So he played very well, and made the most out of his blowpipes. The scribe did, I think, he did okay this game, to be fair. But that's that game. So that was a loss for me if you hadn't worked that out. The score was 8-5. So I mean,
Didn't you?
it looks like it was close.
If I'm not mistaken, wasn't the Goblin King not only like your leader casualty, but didn't that also mean that Louis killed more heroes than you?
So because I think the scribe or someone else fled as well or got killed in the last turn.
Right.
So he still would have had more, so he still would have won. It's just the Goblin King being alive in the last turn would have allowed me to have a go at killing Eowyn. So I was denied that, and so I definitely was going to lose. If I somehow Hail Mary killed her off of a barge, then I might have done better, but it wasn't to be. Lou played very well, and I'm now terrified of Woses, so that's a thing. That brings us to Breakthrough, which was a very fun game. I was using the Return of the King against it was Craig, and he had the Balrog and a dragon, as you can see, and I think about 9 goblins. So I just needed to kill 8 goblins or something. Basically, if he had 3 models on the board, he was 25%ed. So that's when the game would end. And for Breakthrough, it's 4 objectives. You've got a home objective and an opposition objective. And the dragon had fire breath, is that what it's called? But no wings, it just had fire breath. And that was absolutely devastating. He managed to get Aragorn down to 1 wound, no fate. And then Aragorn got held up by a goblin for about 3 turns. So there was some interesting heroic combats that happened, which meant that at one point Aragorn was no longer in combat, and the King of the Dead had an opportunity to charge the Balrog by himself. And I thought, fuck it, and I did it, and I lost the combat, but fortunately the King of the Dead lived, and eventually they managed to gank the Balrog, and I 25%ed, and that just meant that I had the 2 middle objectives and my home objective, which led to an 8-2 victory. And then Lords of Battle, which is the kill point one, and of course, so for this one, my opponent had Army of the Dead. Obviously, I had Army of the Dead as well, but I did not get to use them. So it was Goblins against Army of the Dead in a killing match, and somehow I won. It was really hard fought. My opponent did really, really well. It was against Rich Nutter, and he was a really fun opponent. He did his best to keep his line, but I think there were just too many gobbos in the end. And something happened which I've noticed doesn't help opponents in a lot of games against Goblin Town, and that's to actually move forward. In that, once the battle lines clash, if you start winning combats and killing goblins or pushing them back, and you start moving your dudes forward, it just allows me to flank them. It means I can put more models on. The first turn of combat, I got to try and charge lots of stuff in, but literally only 1 goblin made it in. And that's, of course, because all my goblins are courage 1, while the King of the Dead is alive. And later on in the game, I mean, even in the mid-game, I was rolling crazy well for a lot of the courage tests. I did manage to gank quite a lot of people, and I used Gollum and the King to kill his King and his Aragorn, and then it was just a matter of trying to win the combats and killing the guys. I think it was very, very close to breaking. I can't remember if I did end up breaking, but it was a 5-3 win. The last 2 games then, we've got Heirlooms, which I got to use my goblins again. I think I used the goblins 4 times. Looking at it now, I thought it was even, but this was against Alexander, and he had Numenorians with Sealdor, the one with the ring, yeah, Sealdor, and 3 captains with a bunch of dudes. I got quite lucky in this. I'd positioned 2 of the objectives on top of buildings, and I was clearing out the objectives from the other side of the board away from my opponents, one at a time. My goblin got the objective, and I more or less wrapped him up and just survived the rest of the game, and ended up winning 6-0. For retrieval, I played against what's it called, Arnor. It was against Ned, who's a very good opponent. Essentially, I just tried to attack into the objective because he had archery and I did not. So my only option was to go forward. I don't know if both of you know how many goblins the scribe brought on this game, but if you don't know, I'd like you to have a guess. Do both of you know, or?
I think you told me, but I think it's less than 10.
I think you told me it was 6.
Yeah, it was 6. And 3 of those were on the last turn, so they did nothing. I could not believe my luck. We went through, I think, 7 turns in total. I brought 1 on in the 3rd turn, 2 on 2 turns from that in turn 5, and then 3 in turn 7. And yeah, that was the most abysmal rolling I've ever done for the scribe. And this scenario really would have been helpful. But he just made a shield wall and held on, and I was 1 away from breaking at the end of the game, and he'd wounded the Goblin King because I decided that I was going to heroic combat and then use 2 might to win that combat, and then fail to kill my opponents. So I burnt all my might. It was incredibly irresponsible of me because the next turn he won the combat, wounded the Goblin King, I failed his blubbery mass and his fate. And had I had a might, I would have been able to save him, or even win the combat in the first place. So that was my bad. But the fact he was 1 away from breaking me, I mean, he deserved the win, I think. And that left me on 3-3, more or less bang on the middle of the table. I was where am I? 15th, and that's all of my games. So
nice,
Chef.
I was going to say, which game did you particularly enjoy? Which one was your favourite game?
Oh, my favourite game.
Game 1?
My favourite game. I mean, against the Balrog and the Dragon was the most unique game I played, in that I don't think I've played against a dragon before. Yeah, let's say that, because I'm also quite used to playing my goblins, so those games interest me less now. But it was also very fun playing against Chef, even though we've played that exact game before, i.e. those 2 armies. But that was also good fun. It was fun watching Chef go from absolute dismay before the game to not believing his bad luck in the middle of the game, and then a slow sort of hike to relief by the end of the game.
Yeah, I think the term "this is bullshit" may have been spouted more than one occasion in our game.
Yeah,
because
sure.
I think you had a very good start. I would say though, out of your games, like on the review, you've gone through them. For me, the most impressive game was your Goblin Town win against Return of the King Legion. Like, I think in Lords, that's an incredibly impressive feat. In my head, that's a very hard win. So I think you've done really well in that situation.
I was surprised that I won that. I think I won enough fights. I had enough dudes. The Army of the Dead was spread out enough. It was difficult for sure. I mean, I had to play so fast. So my poor opponent was probably just. I mean, there were not that many pleasantries near the end of the game because I was just having to say courage test and like point at a guy and then go courage test and then point at a guy and just keep rolling. And God, I was having to play so fast because I had to make so many rolls. It was quite a lot. It was a lot, but it was fun and challenging. I knew I was reading it and I was like, oh, if I if I table you, I assume I win. And my opponent pointed out to me that it actually says in the rule, if you don't have any models left, your opponent scores 7 points. But it was good fun. So, Chef, onto your games and your list. If you wouldn't mind, just briefly recapping your lists and then going through your game.
Sure. Yeah. So my Defenders of Helm's Deep list is pretty standard stuff, really. Those of you that have tuned in before will know I've used a similar army in previous tournaments, but I went with Theoden and Halif in my first warband with a smattering of Royal Guard and regular Rohan warriors, just trying to maximize the amount of throwing spears that I had in that list. Then I had Gamling with the banner, and same there, Royal Guard and Rohan warriors, just to try and boost the numbers. And then a slightly different contingent for Legolas's warband, because I think in the past I've taken maybe 5 or 6 Galadrim, but I decided to maximize that this time round and took 10 with bow and spear. I think the thinking was there is that it allowed me to maintain fight 5 on a wider front, because I could put Halif more to the Rohan side of things. Well, let's say like I could put him more on a flank to cover pretty much center, left, and right of my battle line, which actually he did quite well. And then for my Mordor list, I went with the Witch King, with 3 might, 3 will, and 2 fate. Gothmog with Warg, and then my 2 other heroes were Guritz and Zagdush. Zagdush I quite like. He's not amazing, but he's got strike, which is always a nice threat. It can force your opponent to really, think whether they need to save their might in case of potential strike off. And ultimately, if I lose Zagdush, it's not really the end of the world. But if I strike up and take on, let's say, an Aragorn or an Elrond, and Zagdush is strength 5, you can do some nasty stuff. He's also, because he can go strength 5, quite reliable at killing troops with 3 attacks as well. And then the troops were just a smattering of Moran and Orcs. I think I had 34 Moran and Orcs in total with the 4 heroes. So yeah, going into, I guess, the first game, we've already gone over that enough, so I don't think I really need to touch on that too much. Other than saying, yeah, I felt particularly fortunate that I got to use my evil list in this scenario, because I really do think it favoured me, and I don't think, as we said, it was impossible for me to win with defenders against your Goblin Town, but I think it would have been a real struggle. So I was very fortunate there. That took me on to my second game. So that was Clash by Moonlight, and that was against Stephen Denby, who I think it's the first time I've faced him. Really nice guy. Obviously, I've watched the guys on Any Heroics do some of their battle reports, and yeah, he was very friendly, very compromising, and very fair throughout our game. So yeah, kudos to him. He was using Riders of Theoden, which actually I thought was quite interesting for both of us. He had more heroes, and obviously death. So he, with Theoden, which was going to be difficult for me to counter. But as you can see in the photo here, I got fairly lucky with the terrain. What I did is I tried to move a smattering of just regular warriors up around the side through the woodland terrain to kind of force him to come forward. And I think I ended up winning that one 6-4. Although it was pretty close. I think it was a bit easier for me to kill more heroes than Stephen, because I could draw out the captains, for example, with a compel or transfix them, and then just swamp them with my regular guys and try and get a kill there. I think actually the Witch King turned one of his captain. I think he rolled 6, 6, and 5 to wound, which was pretty nice. And I think that probably helped me win the game. Another nice move I had was I turned Elfhelm with Gothmog. I think Stephen unfortunately forgot to call heroic defense with Elfhelm, and we kind of had a conversation about it because I'd already done the heroic combat and moved Gothmog into him at that point, and he was like, "Oh, I forgot to call heroic defense," and I was willing for him to to roll a dice to see whether whether he would have called it, but he was fair enough and said, "No, I should have done it early doors." So yeah, I mean, I trapped Elfhelm and I had I think I had 10 or 12 dice wounding him on 4s, so he just got 1 turn. So within 2 combats, I'd already taken down 2 of his heroes and was quite comfortably up on the kill there. So yeah, a really enjoyable game. Really close. I think if it had gone on, I think we finished quite early on that as well. I think we rolled and it ended the first or second turn. No, is that right? Is Clash by Moonlight down to 25? I keep forgetting with that one. Or do you roll a dice?
I can't remember.
Yeah. Either way, I think 6-4 was probably about right. I think maybe I slightly edged it, but I think it was a very close and fairly contested game, so I did enjoy that. Moving on to Breakthrough, that was a very tough game. I was facing Dave Farmer's Kira Fungal Legendary Legion. As most of you know, Dave is a very good player. I think anytime you're facing him, you know you're going to be in for a tough game. I will say I had an incredibly good 2 turns. I mean, my luck was ridiculous. I think I killed multiple guys with throwing weapons, won the move off, going into the first round of combats. Then I think I maybe lost 1 dual roll, and I think that was across about 12 or 13 combats, and I didn't lose a single guy. I think I killed 5 or 6 of Dave's guys, and that included also striking up with Legolas against Shelob and not causing a wound, but at least staving her off for a turn or 2. But that's when the luck kind of ended. Dave played really well from then on in. I mean, positioned really well, managed to call some good combats, and Shelob had an amazing run. I think in 4 or 5 turns of combat, Shelob rolled a 6 every single turn, and
Wow.
arged, I think, in the second turn of combat, and I mistakenly didn't strike up with Legolas. The reason for that is I charged in with Legolas. I thought, well, Shelob's got 2 attacks. I'm going to save the might for a move off next turn, just to basically try and pin Shelob down, because she's only got 2 attacks and she's not got monstrous charge. Then she's less of a threat. Obviously, I forgot about the fact that barge is a thing. So when Dave rolled that 6, then barged everyone away, then charged into Legolas and 1-turned him, I was like, yeah, very well played. Slight oversight on my part, but I think that was well played by Dave. And from then on, in that flank down the right hand side was just it was a losing battle, really. And that eventually allowed Dave to come round, claim my back objective. I think he won 7-3. I think that's because I had one side objective. We were both broken. I had wounded his leader, but he claimed. I think he claimed one side objective, my back objective, and then his objective on his side was contested because I had 2 guys sort of pushing for that in the end. So, I mean, I'm happy with a 7-3 loss. I think I could have maybe done 1 or 2 things differently, but when you're playing against people like Dave Farmer of that ability, if you make one mistake, you're really going to be hard pushed to come back from it. So yeah, so that was the end of day 1. Day 2, we went into Lords of Battle. So by this point, I think this was the 3rd game in a row where I had second game in a row where I've been using my defenders list, and I was actually really happy with this because I was facing Ryan, really nice guy. He had the Dragon Emperor Legion, and I thought, well, this is kind of perfect for me. I can sit back, try and get some early kills with shooting, try and get an early lead on the tally, and then by the time he gets into combats, I'll hopefully outnumber him and try and flank him so that he doesn't get the pike support in. Unfortunately, my shooting was really lackluster. I think I maybe killed 2 guys, and one of those was including spending a point of might with Legolas, which it didn't prove too costly in the end, but it was the first round of shooting, so I just wanted to try and thin the numbers. And I thought, well, in Lords, is a point of might worth it, just to try and put some early pressure. I think if my second round of shooting had gone well, then it probably would have been. But alas, by the time we got into combats, I think I'd only taken 2 of these guys down. And then I think I proceeded to lose pretty much every heroic move from then on in. So my throwing weapons became redundant. And although we were 2 for 2, because his pikes, he didn't really have 3 ranks of pikes because he had to spread his line quite thin. He had the banner. I'm wounding him on 6s. He's wounded me on 5s if I've got a Rohan warrior in front. It just meant that he was able to churn through my troops quite easily. It all came down to the last turn where I was 2 wounds ahead of Ryan at this point, and he had the Dragon Emperor facing 2 guys. So I was like, okay, we'll do that combat last because I know that the Dragon Emperor is going to win there and draw you level. And I think I lost 1 or 2 combats early, which then put Ryan 1 point behind me. And luckily, I had a fluky roll off with a Rohan warrior who rolled a 6 to win the duel and then rolled a 6 to wound. And that was the very last combat before the Dragon Emperor. So luckily for Ryan, he didn't whiff it. He won the combat and killed both of those guys. But what that meant is that I think we both ended up on 36 wounds each. It meant that the final score was 1-1, which is the first time I've ever had that in Laws of Battle. I would imagine that's a very rare score in that scenario. But a really fun game. A lot of fight 5 on the board, which is quite interesting. I think Ryan played it really well. I think he had the luck for the majority of the game in terms of just, like general dice rolling with troops, but I won most of the clutch moments, which I think is how I was able to pull it back because he'd really stretched into like a 5 or 6 wound lead halfway through the game, and I wasn't sure that I was going to be able to get anything out of it. So yeah, really enjoyable game, and I think a draw was a very fair result in the end. Then that moves us on to Heirlooms, where I was. This was the 3rd game in a row, actually, where I was using the defenders list. And by that point, I'd lost and drawn, so I was getting a bit sick of using them, to be honest. I think mentioning in the last game where I lost the luck in throughout the majority of the game, but had the clutch moments, that very much extended into this game where I think I beat Aaron 7-3. I think Sebastian actually played Aaron in an earlier round. I can't remember which one it was, but I think Sebastian will testify that Aaron was a very, very friendly guy, very easy to play against. And very acknowledging of the incredible luck he had at the start of this game. So he got lucky and he picked up the heirloom like right behind his entire army, which kind of scuppered my plans, which was to send a couple of guys around the side, make sure I kind of cornered off 2 objectives and just kind of whittle his numbers down by shooting. So he picked up the heirloom. Luckily, I was in a position where Gamling was kind of off doing his own thing, so he just heroic marched up around the side, avoided combat for a very long time, right up until the end. And I think by the second turn of him being in combat, he'd managed to kill the Orc warrior holding the heirloom and then just held on to it for the rest of the game. In terms of, I don't know how I won this game because I think I was heavily broken. I wasn't a million miles off being 25%ed. And Aaron's, I think I'd only killed like 8 or 10 of these guys. It was an absolute massacre. I was just losing troops left, right, and centre. Halif managed to stay alive for, I think, the whole game up until the last turn, despite having no might from like the second round of combat onwards. He did amazingly. Théoden managed to kill a few. Legolas was just fighting Gothmog on his own for the majority of the combats. and then it was just a case of Gambling just giving himself might back each turn and trying to heroic move his way out of the fighting. I didn't manage to do that because I think Aaron won a couple of move offs. I think I won a couple to the end, but he had a very nice plan set up for the final turn, which probably would have won him the game, and that was to heroic combat Guritz and Zagdush off their combats both into Gambling. He'd made a path available to do that, which would have been incredible if he'd have pulled it off, because we would have been matching fight, but he would have had the numbers and he would have been trapping me, so he almost certainly would have killed me and therefore picked up the heirloom. But he proceeded to lose both those heroic combats. I just shielded and rolled a 6 on both occasions, which effectively won me the game. And Gambling, fighting the 2 guys in that last turn, I think killed both of them. So incredibly lucky from me. And those were the sort of big clutch moments that won me the game in the end. But I think it was pretty undeserving. But as I say, heirlooms is a bit of a funny scenario, isn't it? You can get really lucky by digging it up first and having it behind your army, and then it's almost impossible for your opponent to retrieve it. So
it's very swingy.
It really is. It really is. But no, thoroughly enjoyable game, thoroughly stressful. I think you came over 1 point, Sebastian. I was like, I've just lost for words with the luck I'm having at this point.
Your head was in your hands quite frequently.
Yeah. Which is, and to be fair, the only reason it didn't remain that way at the end is because the fact that Gambling held it. If I hadn't got lucky there, it would have been quite a comprehensive victory for Aaron. So I think he got a bit unlucky towards the end there. That brings us to my last game, which was Retrieval against Elliot from Any Heroics. Really friendly guy. I ended up using my Mordor list for this against his Lothlorien, where he had Galadriel and Celeborn. Say that I think there's been a bit of a running theme about Celeborn's uselessness in the game, but he actually did incredibly well in this game. He single-handedly took on the Witch King and killed him, which was incredibly impressive to see, considering I decimated the rest of Celeborn's warband. But the final result was a narrow 3-2 victory to me. Really, it was a very one-sided affair, unfortunately for Elliot. I had incredible luck throughout the entire game. I managed to win most of the combats, and then when I was winning, my conversion rate was just ridiculous. I think I'd killed 6 or 7 guys by the end of the first round of combats, which is just ridiculous. You normally don't get that, and it's very hard to come back from in that situation, because it then led to a point where I was nearly outnumbering his models 2-1, and that was just in front of where his objective was, where he had Galadriel kind of at the back protecting it. As good as my luck was, Elliot's luck was equally bad, because he had one Galadriel Knight going round the flank for most of the game, trying to tag my objective, and he got quite close to it, probably 1 or 2 turns away. He was just moving up 5 inches to try and get a shot at my 4 orcs that were surrounding it as a buffer. And on the first turn of courage checks, he rolled a 2 and a 1 and fled. And from that point on, I knew I was going to win the game. It was just a matter of how many victory points by it was. Luckily, the game ended, I think, shortly after that. I think Elliot rolled a 1 or a 2, I think, on the first turn of rolling, and the game ended there, which I wasn't disappointed with in this, because of the fact that it had been such a one-sided affair. All I was going to do at that point was tag the objective and probably kill Galadriel as well. And there wasn't really anything Elliot could do to change that or to affect it. So it just felt a bit cruel at that point. Ended up in a narrow 3-2 win. Elliot was a really good sport throughout the entire game. Very, very much taking it on the chin that I had such good luck and he had bad luck. I think I apologized several times throughout the game. When you just have one of those matches where you just generally feel bad for your opponent, because you're not doing anything but spectacular. You're just having hot luck with the dice. So yeah, narrow 3-2 win for me there.
Very nice. So, Sebastian.
So I ended up taking Riders of Theoden for my good list, having just finished painting it the night before. So that's a very hero-heavy list. It's only 12 models, but it takes Theoden, Eomer, Gamling, Deerwine, Elfhelm, Dernhelm, and a captain, and 4 Royal Guard. Quite a fun list. Really, really enjoyed using it throughout the tournament. It's the first time I've sort of played Rohan. Definitely going to be taking it to some more events in the future. And for my evil list, I took the Host of the Dragon Emperor, which I had some success with at a previous tournament, which again was an okay list. I think I only used it twice for this event, but it was 32 models. It's got the Dragon Emperor, Rutabi, and a Dragonite on horse. Your usual drum and a bunch of cataphracts and some acolytes to round things out. So going on to my first game, the Divide and Conquer was against Ned, which I believe we've already mentioned him. Really lovely. He was playing with his Angmar list, which I was very afraid of because it had the Witch King, a Barrow White, which is very bad news for any Rohan hero, Birder, so the option to hurl all my horses around and dismount me quite quickly, and a Shade. So all of my heroes are going to probably be bleeding might to try and win against normal Orc warriors, and then a captain on Warg, and just a bunch of Orcs on foot and a couple of Warg riders. So because it was Divide and Conquer, I was really careful about where I was placing the warbands and really looking at where he was placing his warbands. He ended up putting Birder and the Shade together with 2 warbands on one end of the board, and on the other end of the board he had the Witch King with the Barrow White and the Captain. And I figured it was probably the best plan to divide and conquer, literally, as the scenario suggests that you try and do. I'm using my kind of heroic marching to just rush into one part of his army, try and kill it as fast as possible, then run into the objectives at the end. I figured it would be best to charge against the Witch King and try and take him out, as well as the Barrow White, because they have the range similar to the Mayor's game, when he figured, actually, I should probably go for the Witch King because he can deal that ranged, immobilized threats. And I didn't really want to go against the Troll and the Shade, especially since they wouldn't be able to affect the combats too much from afar. So I had a very fun, fluffy moment where I decided to take a heroic combat with Dernhelm and charge the Witch King. They had 1 or 2 turns of combat where I won the first turn, did a wound, he saved it on a second fate. He then won the next combat without me being able to help her out. And it was eventually I was able to kill that half of his army. The Barrow White I managed to resist both times, which was very lucky. But unfortunately, the 2-hour timer had ended by roughly this point. So he had moved up with Birder and the Shade and basically took 2 of those objectives, whilst I had almost broken him, not quite. I think I was 1 or 2 models off. But I did get some points for killing the Witch King, so that ended up being a 3-7 loss. On my second game, Clash by Moonlight, this was against Aaron, again, an opponent that we've already addressed. Really lovely, really good. I had played Aaron before at a previous tournament, and I think it went quite similar to how this game went. Aaron was using his Gondor army this time, which had Denethor, Bolt Thrower, Madril, and Boromir with his banner, which had 42 models, lots of Ascilith veterans, Rangers, Citadel Guard with longbows, and a few knights. So I knew that obviously I had to go to him, because even though there's a 12-inch range limit, the siege bolt thrower could still shoot up to 24. It just hits on 6s instead. So it's still a case of trying to drum and get to him as quickly as possible. I noticed that there was one part of the board which was a choke point, and I really wanted to use that as a way of out attritioning Aaron, because I figured he has spears, I have pikes. We are both fight 5 because of Boromir's banner and because of the Emperor's fight value bonus. So I was figuring if I've got 3 dice against his 2 dice, in theory, it should go my way. Unfortunately, the Aaron's dice were just really hot. And he was, just chucking 2 dice, getting a 5 or a 6 pretty much every time he rolled 2 dice. So even though we both need 6s to kill each other, he was killing me almost every combat, and I was just not killing him. Like, even bouncing off of one warrior with my Dragon Knight, it was that kind of game. I think he killed about 5 or 6 models before combat even started. Getting that +1 to wound was pretty devastating, especially against my defense 4 acolytes. So yeah, unfortunately, I figured I had to go for the choke point because he had 10 more models than me and Boromir, who was just going to be smashing into my pipeline. So this was pretty devastating. I lost this one 1 point to 8. There was a moment where I had a bit of a fuck it moment. I'm gonna just charge the Dragon Knight into Boromir right at the end of the game.
Just in case.
Just to try, like the Emperor was on him as well, and it was like, all right, Emperor and Dragon Knight against Boromir. I can
enough, right?
I can try and win the strike off, and then kill a hero, because at this point in the game, no heroes had died. It was basically just 5-0 because he had broken me without being broken, and I figured I could try and make the score a little bit a bit nicer for me by being the only one to kill a hero. But unfortunately, I only struck up to a 9. Boromir won, got to a 10, rolled a 6, and then did 2 wounds to the Dragon Knight, just natural 5s. He had no might left. And because the Dragon Knight has no fate, he just died, so he was the only hero that died. So I probably shouldn't have charged him in anyway. But I would have lost regardless. So it was a very good game. But lost to the attrition war to Gondor. And then the final game of the first day was Breakthrough, and I was using my Rohan again. But this time I was playing against Connor, who ended up being the most average overall at the tournament. He was really lovely, great to play against. Very thematic matchup. He was using his Isengard list, which consisted of Lurtz, Maher, Vrasku, and Sharku. He had about 48 models with a mix of Wargs, Marauder, Scouts. I think he had about 8 crossbows as well as Vrasku, but like 8 shields and 8 pikes, and a banner here and there. So initially, this was not a very good scenario for me, because obviously trying to get to his objective while he sat on it with a bunch of crossbows and pikes, I have to go to him. And after the first turn, he called a heroic accuracy with Vrasku, managed to hit Theoden's horse and Gamling's horse. Gamling passed his horse lord though, so that's okay. And then Theoden had to spend all 3 of his might because I rolled a 1 on his horse lord. So I had to spend all of it just to stay on his horse. And there was a turn where I had to basically just go, right, well, I'm going to just move into the middle of of your army, because you're just pivoting and outmaneuvering me. He was very good at positioning his crossbows in a way in which no matter how I did it, I was going to have to be out in the open for a turn. So I figured it would best to do that sooner than later. So I positioned myself in a big ball, shoved them up halfway through the board, and then just went, right, cool, priority. And I ended up losing that priority, lost the heroic move off, and I was like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble. Did manage to survive just about that initial turn of combat. And the following turn, it basically just, the flip just switched, and I just was rolling really hot. Won all of the roll-offs. Like, it was crazy. Like, I just called death. Was heroic combating, heroic striking, just doing what the list is built to do. And I hadn't felt that yet. Like I hadn't used this list and seen that power. Like it was crazy to me that all these like heroes were just knocking down, killing on fives, double the dice. Like it was nuts. Like it was just so fun. Like to just use it, and it felt so themey because it was obviously against Isengard. But it got to the point eventually in the game where I'd killed Lurtz. I'd managed to kill Merher after a heroic combat. He hadn't spent any might with him because it literally was just Deowine combating into him, knocking him over, killing him. And I was clearing up the rest of his models that were on his back objective. He had sent scouts to all three of the other objectives, and I just about broke him. And then he failed two of his courage tests. So the one on my objective, my home objective, which would have scored him 4 points, ran away. And one of the ones on the side ran away. And then I managed to contest the third one with heroic combat from Elfhelm. So the score on that one eventually was a 7-0 win. After being on that bottom table, so that felt good to bounce back right from the bottom of the tournament at this point in the day.
I remember coming over during this game and seeing all of your shit surrounded and thinking that you didn't look very happy. And then I came back later and you still had the same amount of models on the board, except there were probably just as many Isengard models at that point.
Yeah, it was just, I don't know what happened. It was just, I was rolling what I needed to roll, and because I'd taken out his main heroes, he wasn't able to contest the heroic move offs anymore. He'd spent three whole turns shooting at me with heroic accuracy with Rasku, and like the luck just sort of turned for me. Like I managed to just about kill Sharku without killing myself, because he does that strength 4 hit for every unsuccessful wound on him. So I had to be quite careful with who I was charging him with. Like at that point, at the very end of the game, Theoden was off his horse, the captain was off his horse, but I still had like 3 or 4 Rohan heroes still at full strength, charging in, having the higher fight and that kind of stuff. And the reoccurring might with Gamling is just insane. So the start of day 2, I paired against Louis, who again we've already spoken about. Really lovely, fantastic opponent to have. He was using Isengard again, so I was using my Rohan, and it just felt like a very themey, fluffy matchup, very similar to the previous game. I wasn't feeling overly confident in this one though, because Lords of Battle can be very iffy, especially with Rohan having like horses, like giving those extra points, because if you wound the horse, that's like an additional wound. All of your fate counts as wounds. So if you get that kind of scenario where you get trapped and killed very quickly, like each of your guys is worth like maybe 3 or 4 wounds each. So it actually makes the wound tally quite even. So his heroes in this list, he had Saruman as his leader, accompanied by Vrasku. And Grima, I should say first. He had Grima, which hadn't faced before, so I had to quickly check how Theoden was going to be affected by his madness. Fortunately, though, in this game, it didn't actually come into play, but I'll tell you more about that in a second. So, he had Saruman, Grima, Lurtz, Vrasku. This time we have 12 crossbows on top of Vrasku, so quite a lot of shooting. And then he filled out his numbers with lots of orcs, which I thought was quite interesting. I think he wanted to balance out the numbers because he took Saruman, which was a smart move. Getting some extra dice in there with the spears, I think really works. Gets you extra models to take more crossbows. So I think it was a solid idea, solid list. And this game was over in 55 minutes. And I have to say, I've never had as good luck in this game as I think I've ever had in any game I've ever played. But it was all capitalized because of one small mistake that unfortunately Louis had made. So during deployment, he did exactly what he should do, which is deploy at the back. There was a huge open space in front of him. He lined up all his crossbows in a really nice way. They were all spear supported, and he left a gap right in the middle of his battle line for Saruman to be able to run forward, cast a spell, run back. And I thought, that's exactly what I'm expecting. Probably try and resist some fireballs, because obviously that will knock me off my horse, or even maybe a compel, so he can shoot at me without any in the ways, that kind of stuff. So I deployed in like a kind of central bubble, keeping Grima in one place, and then I decided to have a heroic march on the first turn just to get closer to him, get to some terrain, so that his shooting wouldn't be quite so devastating. And he goes up. Saruman tries to blast Theoden. Theoden's able to resist on a 6, which is great. So I can keep the will. And then he decides to move the rest of his army forwards, which I was very surprised by, because it basically meant that none of his crossbows would be able to shoot this turn. So instead of just moving up a little bit, I just went, right, okay, well, I'm just going to march right into the middle of this giant space that you deployed next to and just stay outside of your charge range, because you've got no cavalry apart from Saruman, and I very much doubt Saruman's going to charge in by himself. And then next turn, he won. So I won priority. We both call a heroic move. He does it with Saruman. I do it with, I think it was Captain. And I won the roll off, and it was just Eomer straight into Saruman. Dernhelm charging a guy, Deowine charging in, Elfheim charging in, Gamling being a banner in the middle, Captain charging into Frescu. And you can see on the picture, basically, that turn. Actually, this is the turn afterwards, but Theoden was sort of a little bit further back. Like, I didn't commit Theoden because he wasn't in range to charge, and I didn't want him to be combated into or anything like that. But he charged Lurtz into a Royal Guard, and we got to the fight phase, and I was like, right, okay, I'm calling death. I'm going to do combat with Dernhelm, combat with Deowine. I'm going to strike with Theoden just in case he combats through my Royal Guard with Lurtz onto Theoden. So I was like, right, it's going to put him off. Combating with everybody else, basically striking with Eomer because Saruman is also fight 5. And again, I won the roll off to go first. So Dernhelm killed the one Uruk that she was in combat with, and then charges into Lurtz. Beats Lurtz. Like, he rolls terribly for his attacks. I think he got like a 3 high after his banner reroll with like a support. So Dernhelm then quickly dispatched Lurtz, like, just spending the might that I need to kill him.
Look, Lurtz being underwhelming.
Yeah, he really was underwhelming, unfortunately. But I think if he was able to go first, it would have been slightly different. And yeah, from there it was just Eomer got 2 wounds onto Saruman. He managed to spend his 3 fate and prevent the wounds. But like the next few turns, it was just I win the roll off again, charging in, just knocking everything down, combating here and there, striking with Eomer once again. The game basically ended with a complete tabling. I lost 2 models. And bless him, Louis just got to the point where I was like, it's cool. Like, you do you, man. You go for the record. Like, see how many wounds you can get. And yeah, it was. I felt really bad because when you get to that stage where you're like, both of you are not enjoying the game at this point. Like, he's just having to take his models off the table. I'm just rolling my dice, and he's not rolling anything because I'm just rolling 6s everywhere. But we, so because of the tabling, I finished on a 12-0 win. But we managed to play a quick, fun 55-minute game afterwards, where he chose let's do Contest of Champions, and that was an interesting choice. But he managed to win that little fun game on the side.
Nice.
But it felt really good to just have like a nice game after that. It was like no pressure. But yeah, like a lot of the
4 games that day.
yeah, I did. Yeah. Oh no, because this was I will have played 4 games. Yeah. Really enjoyed the breakthrough game and the Lord's Battle game. So now on to heirlooms. This was against Rob. Rob was really, really lovely. Rob ended up winning Best Sport. I may have voted for him as my second day sport. And yeah, this was completely my bad. I lost this game 4-6. So he was using his Beonings, the two bears, baby bear, daddy bear, and 15 Beonings. And I was using my Easterlings. He comes on first. He rolls 2 4s with both of his warbands. So they both walk on the north side. And I roll with the Emperor. Emperor rolls a 1. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. He can stay off. I then roll Rutabi. Rutabi comes on east or west. And then I roll for the Dragon Knight. I come east or west. So I come on the 2 opposite sides of the board. And the plan was to tag all the objectives that were close to his army, because he'd balled up into one little force. Get rid of the objectives, tag like all of the bears and Beonings where they are, and just try and either break myself or cause a wound on the leader. Just using my resources that didn't matter, so not my leader and not my fight 5. Just getting them in and holding up the army, whilst the Emperor comes on later and gets the last objective with the drummer, and the drummer would just be moving 15 inches every turn away from the bears, and they, in theory, couldn't catch me unless they, hurt combat, move 8, and that kind of stuff. But it was totally my fault, because there were 3 objectives I could have gone for, and the objective I decided to go for was right under the arches that you can see in the picture, right under that dojo. I rolled a 6, and it was right next to a big scary Bayon. So if I had done either of the 2 objectives that were closer to the opposite side of the board, I would have rolled a 6 then instead, and then it would have been a very different game. But unfortunately, I rolled the 6 right next to Bayon, and the game was basically over at that stage, because he then won priority, charged my poor black dragon with Bayon, hero combated away, and I basically couldn't catch him for the rest of the game. So the 2 bears basically just ran and went into the very corner on the opposite side of the board, and I had to spend all 3 of my might with the Dragon Emperor to actually walk onto the board in the right place, because I rolled another 1. So the game was basically, here you go, you can kill all of my Beonings and break me 25% me and end the game. While you do that, Bayon's just going to sit in the corner with the heirloom. And it got to the point where I had killed basically every model except for the 2 bears, and it ended the game. So I did have the banner. I did break him without being broken. So it ended up being a 4-6 loss. But a very fun game. It was nice not to have to play against the bears, because obviously they are very powerful and they can be very difficult to deal with. And it was actually just nice not having to deal with it, even though it resulted in a loss.
Yeah.
But yeah, so yeah, good game. And my final game was against Tivil, which was a very fantastic game. He was using Lurtz's scouts. I was using my Rohan. So again, like another very thematic matchup. It was very fun. I was looking forward to playing, but he had quite a lot of models. The heroes that he took was Lurtz, Merher, Uglug, a captain, and the drummer. Lots of scouts with Uruk bows. And yeah, so I mean, this game was a bit of an odd one. I realized that I wasn't going to have enough models to hold back the storm. And again, him being able to drum and move half with his models meant that he could basically go about 5.5 inches and still shoot. And if he decided to drum and to march, then he could actually go 7 inches and still shoot, which I think is just a bit bizarre. So I realized, obviously, I've got to go to him. I went up in a big sort of death ball. I allowed him to charge my Royal Guard, who was just sat at the front, being a kind of anchor and a bit of a shield wall, human shield. And then I countercharge, which you can see in the picture, with Dernhelm, Theoden, Eomer, and a rider. This is the turn that I call death, because I figured I might be able to get my captain onto Merher. I might be able to get Deowine around onto the banner or something. Dernhelm might be able to come and help out. But I also noticed that right in the middle of the table was Lurtz, who was about 8 inches away. And unfortunately, Tivil didn't see that that Lurtz was out in the open. So when I called death, I called a strike with Eomer and a combat with Theoden. And you can see that they're only fighting one orc. So once they'd killed him, they went straight into Lurtz, who had nobody around him, no banner, no nothing. And yeah, he just insta died. He got flash killed. So he got basically flash killed in every game that I've played with the Rohan, which was really unfortunate for him. Merher was able to do a heroic combat as well, though, and took out my captain and a couple of the Royal Guard. It was really odd. This is the first time with this list I had to sort of spread out all over the board. So Theoden and Eomer were fighting Ukluk and a warband of guys and the captain for most of the game, while Elfhelm and a Royal Guard was sat on my objective trying to just prevent the 8-inch moving Uruks from capping my objective. And I sent Dernhelm straight through the middle. She managed to heroic combat through a couple of orcs just to get to his back line and get behind the building that had the objective. And so she was able to eventually retrieve the objective because it's a light object. You can pick it up even though you're on a horse because you've got expert rider. So I managed to move his objective. I killed Lurtz. Theoden somehow didn't die after facing 3 or 4 combats against Ugluk, who was striking. It was a strike off. 3 out of 4 of those turns, he didn't charge. He charged me, so I only had the 2 dice. But again, my dice were amazing, and his dice were just awful. Like, it got to the point where, again, you just kind of felt like, okay, this is just playing out because of the 50-50s. There were lots of moments when Theoden could have died, Eomer could have died. But yeah, eventually I managed to break him. I was about to kill Ugluk, and we just kind of called it there. We said, look, I've moved the objective. You've not moved it. You're not going to move it. You're broken now. You're going to have to start doing courage tests and that kind of stuff. And I still had all of my heroes alive except for the captain. And I still had 2 Royal Guard as well. So it was, it was a very fun game. And we ended on the win. So it was at 8-0 to finish off the day. So I really enjoyed it.
You did well, and you got 3-3 overall as well, didn't you? Same as me.
Yes, yeah, 3-3 overall. So I was very, very pleased.
But you finished higher than me.
Only just.
That's not the matters. Excellent. Well, would you each like to talk about the things you won?
Yeah, would you like to go first, Chef?
Yeah, I've got a few awards, so it probably makes sense. I very luckily managed to walk away with 3rd place. I've got to give a shout out to Dewey for that, because after me and Elliot's game finished, I think we finished quite early comparatively to the rest of the games. I saw that I was 3rd in the table and Dewey was facing Stephen. I think Stephen was 4th at that point, so he only needed a draw to go ahead of me. Luckily Dewey ended up winning, which I have him to thank for that 3rd place finished. Was very happy with that.
Well done.
I think that's 3rd and 2nd now at a GBHL 90. Gonna have to try and get that 1st place somehow.
Yeah. Well, you've won an 80, haven't you?
I've won an 80, yeah. I'll have to borrow your Goblin Town mare at some point and take that to a 90. And then the prize for that was some measuring sticks, which was a really lovely prize, actually, really handy. I actually think I won that at the Great Deeds of Lesser Heroes event that Leon also hosted a couple of months back. This time it came in a really nice magnetized case, which I proceeded to rot.
We were like, how do you open this? And then it just sort of all came out, didn't it?
it kept coming out. The measuring sticks just kept coming. So I end up like missing out on Dave and Dewey's awards for second and first place as a result of that. But no, a lovely prize. I think Liam always gives out good awards and good prizes for his events. So yeah, kudos to him for that.
And Sebastian, what about you? What did you win?
I was fortunate enough to walk away with the Best Army Award using my Rohan. Was really, really pleased because I had put a lot of hours into it and the weeks that were prior, and it's the first time I tried non-metallic metal gold. So the whole model was just kind of painted just as you see it. So it's the first time I tried that, so I was really pleased. And there was a lot of freehand, and obviously there's a lot of heroes, so there's loads of detail. So yeah, I was very, very happy to come away with that. There was a lot of really nice looking armies there. And I also managed to come away with the best single miniature, which I entered my Glorfindel, which I'm very proud of. It's my favorite sculpt from the MESBG range, and it was my favorite kind of color scheme to put on, and yeah, I just really enjoyed the model, and I'm glad that that other people got to vote for it. Really,
Sebastian winning painting awards. Cue the collective shock around the GBHL community.
Yeah, there were a couple of groans as usual, but I did leave the display board competition. It was a really lovely display.
I don't think you'd have won.
No,
anyway, to be honest.
No, exactly. Richard is very, very good. Richard Croydon, who also came, I believe, second for the best single mini. His display board progress is amazing. He's done phenomenal Mordor display previously, like a Minas Morgul, which is like the Witch King's head, his helmet, and this display board, which was like a Dark Denizens versus Mirkwood, with spider webs and LEDs all over it. It was very, very well deserved display board to take away the prize.
Yeah, he had that Minas Morgul display board, I think, Into the West as well. It was incredible. I think it won an award there as well. But yeah, he's very, very good. So yeah, I think that display board award was richly deserved for him.
Shall we look at the predictions?
Myself and Sebastian obviously went 3-3, and Chef went 1-1-1. Is that right? Sorry, 4-1.
You mean 4-1-1?
I said he got more than one victory. Yeah, yeah, I went 4-1-1. Yeah.
Okay, so my let's have a look. So your predictions for me were both completely off. My prediction for myself was the closest, but that last game that could have been a draw was a loss, and so I was slightly off. Looking at my prediction for Chef, it was bang on for 1-1. And Chef's prediction for himself was a bit bleaker, and Sebastian, your prediction was a bit better. So we were about right for Chef, ever the consistent one. And then we're sort of, again, all over the place for you, Sebastian. I think Chef was closest with 3, 1, and 2.
I mean, mine's similar, but yeah, I think he is the closest.
Yeah, true, actually. Your Chef was on the optimistic side of wrong, and you were the pessimistic side of wrong.
Yeah, and I'll take it. I never mind going 3-3 at an event.
Yeah, I think it's good. Awesome. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you again to Lionel for running the event, and for everyone in Worcester making it a nice event to go to. And we'll look forward to going to the next one and seeing you all there. So it's goodbye from myself, and it's goodbye from Chef.
Bye, everyone.
And goodbye from Sebastian.
Goodbye.